So anyway, I had an interesting run-in on Facebook with someone who was attacking me and people like me for making fun of this ugly woman who was attacking Donald Trump about making budget cuts to the education system, or budget cuts uh, that would undermine the public education system in America. And this woman looked like Sid Caesar to me. I asked the question, is that Sid Caesar? Anybody who knows Sid Caesar or doesn't know who Sid Caesar was, he was a comedian. He did a lot of sketch comedy back in the 50s and 60s. And he was he had a unique look to him. He was kind of funny looking, especially the older he got, the funnier looking he got. And he was kind of a funny guy. He had some moments where he was actually pretty funny. But this woman looked like him, and she's some kind of politician or something, and she's freaking out because Donald Trump's making cuts to some parts of the budget that's going to affect her beloved education system. And I find it eerie that people defend the public education system even when they say that taxation is theft and they don't believe in government. And of course, they proceed to attack people who use vulgarity when making an argument. Well, what's funny is all I said is that Sid Caesar? And some other people were making fun of the way she looked or something, and they're free. And then, of course, this guy goes on a social justice warrior rampage and starts, freaking out on people that he probably agrees with on most parts, but just had to make a little splash in the water because he can't stand the way people, honestly think of somebody. A person has an honest, someone uses honesty to describe someone, or they honestly tell people how they feel. Oh, God, that's the end of the world if someone is honest for 5 minutes. But it's funny because this person claims they're an anarcho-capitalist, or in that they're in that realm of anarcho-capitalism or voluntarism, where they believe that the government has a false position and the government shouldn't be funded, and that taxation is theft, and we shouldn't live in a society with government. But this person defends someone who works for the government, who is a politician. When you defend a politician, your position is false because you're attacking me because I said the woman looked like Sid Caesar, and you disagree with the woman's position, yet you attack me because I made fun of her, because it's so immature to make fun of someone. Like, I'm sorry, I've been on all sorts of arguments where I've made disgusting remarks to people. I've been in situations where I calmly disagreed with someone and didn't say anything nasty to the person. I shared links to things that I think they should read or should watch, and I was nice about it. And sometimes they still attacked me. They still called me names, and I was just sharing links with them. I was sharing a link to a video by David Friedman. David Friedman is kind of an ANCAP. He's kind of a libertarian. He basically he studied law for quite a few years. I mean, he has a law degree and all that. And he goes around and does speeches, and he discusses things regarding law. And one of his more prominent videos with the ANCAP crowd, with the libertarian crowd and the anarcho-capitalist and voluntarist, is a video where he explains how law would work without government, how order would work without government, how you'd get things done in society without government from a point of view of law. And I share this video all the time with people. And I don't even attack people I'm doing. I'm saying, this is how I feel about society. This is how I feel about government and how we can get things done without government. I share them a link to David Friedman talking about it. And they still don't understand it. So I don't understand why people think that you can be very immature about your argument. And you automatically lose the argument because you're mature. But somehow you automatically win the argument if you're mature. Well, I've been in both situations where I've made vulgar comments, and I made vulgar comments, and then on the flip side, I've made very just and very kind and very firm, but also very neutral comments about things while stating my opinion. I didn't go out of my way to insult the person that I disagreed with. I didn't call them names. I didn't attack them. I didn't insult them or in any kind of fashion. I didn't disgruntle them. I didn't set out to offend them, but people will still think they lost the argument because if you disagree with someone, their argument is false anyway, according to them. As long as they disagree with you, their argument stands. Their argument is the one that wins. It's the winner, the clear winner. Even if you quote unquote, however you say that, even if you come at them in a mature manner, people still are offended. So calling a woman Sid Caesar or saying that a woman looks like Sid Caesar because she really does, the woman is quite ghastly, is not being immature. It's just making an observation. And I'm not making fun of her just because she's ugly. I mean, I don't think a person's stupid because they're ugly. I'm not saying a person doesn't know anything about life or doesn't know anything about the subject they're talking about just because they're ugly. It's just the fact is there's so many things I could have made fun of that woman about because I think I know her position's false. First of all, she's a welfare whore. If she's a politician, she's stolen your money somehow. If you live in her state or her district or whatever she represents or claims to represent, she's stolen your money. Whether you voted for her or not, she's stealing your money. And then she's going up there telling that Donald Trump's gotta save education and can't make these cuts to education. Well, it doesn't matter what he makes cuts to because the budget never gets cut. It's just the money's rearranged to different areas. I mean, all presidents do it, and the problem is it's a game of who's doing what with who else's whom else's stolen money. I steal your money and I pretend I know what I'm doing with it. I'm just gonna spread it around here, and then all of a sudden I'm gonna move it over here, and then and then everybody's gonna make a big deal about it. It's all a big illusion because it's at the end of the day it's still stolen money. And this guy that attacked me for being immature. He was saying I'm an immature idiot. He was actually almost agreeing with the lady's position on it. And this guy claims to be an anarchist, and he claims to hate taxation. And he doesn't like the welfare system, and he doesn't like the public education system, but yet he was saying, I'd rather my money go to the public education system rather than war and all this other crap. I was like, I don't want my war to go I don't want my money, my money to go to any of those things. I mean, and if you think differently, then maybe you're on a false front. Maybe your position is false because you're softening your stance because you feel sorry for the lady because people are making fun of her for being an old bag of crap, for being an old Sid Caesar looking motherfucker. I mean, I'm sorry. I apologize for making fun of someone for what they look like. People make fun of the way I look. I mean, people make fun of the way I talk. Even when I'm being nice to people insult me, and it's what people do. People insult each other, even when there's no reason to insult someone, they insult people. So what's the difference? I mean, you're not attacking if this woman called Donald Trump an orange motherfucker, you'd probably laugh at her and say, "Oh, that's the funniest thing I ever heard. That's the funniest thing I heard all day long." And you'd probably agree with her on it. You'd probably say, "Yeah, Donald Trump does look like an orange ape, or he looks like an orange sack of shit." I mean, you would agree with her if she said something nasty about Donald Trump the way he looks. Oh, he's got a fake spray tan. Oh, yeah, he does. Doesn't he? It's funny. So it doesn't. So people don't take into account that they've insulted people, and that they would agree with insults on people, and they have an immature way of dealing with things. But somehow their way is mature because they're offended by what you said about someone who they claim they don't even agree with. I don't agree with her, but you can't say that about her because that's offensive, and you're not making a mature argument. You're immature for calling her a Sid Caesar, or the other guy's immature because he said something about the way she looks. Well, people make fun of people all the time, especially when you're talking about public figures. Politicians are mocked all the time for political stances, for the way they look, for the way they act, the way they talk, the way they dress. So it's funny how all of a sudden you call someone. When you say a woman looks like Sid Caesar, all of a sudden it's the most disgusting, vile thing you could ever say. I didn't cuss. I didn't say anything. I didn't make any vulgar comments besides the fact that I compared her to Sid Caesar, which for a woman is quite comical. So I digress into this idea that I have. This person is not really an anarchist, and I shouldn't make the no true Scotsman argument. But the problem is when you soften your stance because you're offended by what someone says, and that kind of shows that you lack integrity and you lack conviction on your stance and on your ideas. Because you claim to agree with me, but somehow, because I said something that you claim that's immature, then suddenly you disagree with me, even though the fact is you claim to agree with me, but yet you're agreeing with someone you disagree with, and you're defending someone you disagree with when you don't have any reason to defend them. I mean, first of all, the person, it's not like you jumped in front of them when someone was, it's not like you go up to someone and because you disagree with them, you decide to shoot them because you disagree with them. And someone who agrees with you decides that's inhumane and steps in front of the person and says, please don't kill this person just because you disagree with them. I agree with you, pal, but I don't agree with the way you're doing things. Don't kill this person. We can discuss this. You know, it's not like I did that. It's just the fact is I made fun of someone and they said it was immature. It's not like I attacked the person physically and violated their personal space. It's I made fun of them. And this lady will never know who I am. And it's like I went on her page and made fun of her. It's like I went on her political page or went on her official whatever page. I don't know. I'd have to go back to this video and see what this woman even does for a living. I know she's some kind of politician. And even if she's not, she's advocates for certain political, rhetoric, whatever. She's still a political pundit, no matter what. So she's some kind of politician. And this whole ordeal with Donald Trump's retardation, and of course, she just wants to, insert her brand of tyranny and her brand of retardation, just like any other politician. But so you disagree with her, yet you're more willing to attack me because you claim that I'm making immature claims and I'm saying something immature. And then you spend the next 10 comments insulting me and call me an idiot. Okay, first of all, if your stance is you can argue with people gracefully without insulting them, you can make your point without insulting them, but yet you made your point by calling me an idiot. Every comment you made, you called me a fool or an idiot. So I think it's funny when people say that you can't insult people and make an intelligent argument, but you call someone an idiot when you're arguing with them, and then you claim that you're not being immature. Because what if you added the word fucking in that insult? What if you called a person a fucking idiot, and rather just not just an idiot, but a fucking idiot? Wouldn't that be vulgar and insulting? And wouldn't that be a vulgar insult to the person? Wouldn't that be a dubious? I mean, so your claim is dubious. You're making a dubious claim that's saying that a person's immature because they called someone, or they referred to someone as Sid Caesar. They look like Sid Caesar. That it's insulting and it's disgraceful and it's a testament to the immaturity of your vernacular or the way you express yourself. You're very immature. But it's funny because you can argue. I've seen it and I've been part of it. I've been involved with several arguments with people, and I've done it both ways. I've done it the vulgar way and I've done it the peaceful way. I peacefully disagreed with someone and they still attacked me and they still didn't understand my argument. They didn't read the links, they didn't watch the videos, and I was just saying, hey, look, this is the way I feel things can be done, and I may not be able to express my way I may not be able to express it the best way. I think there's people that have done it before me that express the visions I share with them, that they envision it better, and I think they express themselves better than I do. So here, take their word for it. This is similar things what I believe in. This is similar to what I believe in, and I share them videos or share them blogs or share them, certain citations or Mises or Mises, how do you say Ludwig Von's last name? Or I share something from LouRockwell.com. Maybe someone contributed something to LouRockwell.com, or maybe it's Lou Rockwell himself writing a blog, or typing out a blog or whatever, or someone who works for him, or a colleague of his or whatever. But I share something from him, or I share something from David Friedman or Ron Paul or somebody, and but the people don't understand it. Even when you're arguing with them nicely, even when you're putting it nicely, even when you have an opinion and you're not trying to defend someone, you're just trying to get your point across without offending people, they get offended, or they insult you, or they call you stupid or fanatical or a cynic, or they call you fantastical, or you're silly, or you're a utopian. You have a utopian ideology that will never work. So people are fine with insulting you when they disagree with you. But if you disagree with them, it doesn't matter if you insult them or not, and it doesn't matter if you insult them or not. I've been there, done that. even if you don't insult people when you're arguing with them, even when you clearly just state your opinion and argue nicely, which is a disagreement, is kind of a soundful, peaceful argument. When you just disagree with people, discussion, when you debate with people, you're not screaming or yelling about it, calling them names, and you're not insulting them. You're just disagreeing with them, and you're having a dialogue about it. That's a disagreement or a debate. See, argument would be more like people cussing each other out. But the thing is, when you cuss people out, you're mature. But even when you debate them nicely and have a nice debate, you're mature. Somehow they'll find a way to immature you or label you immature. Oh, you're immature because they disagree with you. But if they agreed with you on something, all of a sudden you're a scholar. All of a sudden you're Socrates. All of a sudden you're the master of the English language. All of a sudden you're you're a Harvard professor. All of a sudden you're top dog. All of a sudden you're Shakespeare when it comes to dialogue and expressing your opinions. You just know how to do it. But when they disagree with you, they'll find any way to insult you and then claim that you insulted them. And so it really doesn't matter at this point. And it's funny because people who will agree with me are somehow disagreeing with me. So in reality, how are you agreeing with me? If you're insulting me, you don't agree with what I'm saying. So I think that calling me an idiot and all that stuff and saying that I'm immature is just basically showing me that you actually agree with the person that I'm insulting. That if I am insulting someone who looks like Sid Caesar, a woman who looks like Sid Caesar, I think you're agreeing with her more than you're agreeing with me. So I don't think you're against education. The public education, being, forcing other people to fund other people's public education, their grammar school and their high schools and their middle schools and their whatever, forcing people to pay for other people's education. I think you want people to be forced to pay for other people's education. I don't think you're an anarchist. I don't think you believe in anti-government sentiment. I think you are with those people. You are with those people. And it doesn't matter if it's Donald Trump or the lady who was, talking to Donald Trump or talking about Donald Trump. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what side you're on. You took a side, and I don't care what Trump does because it doesn't matter at this point because he's going to do the same thing as the other presidents, and you're going to praise him or you're going to hate him. And you do the same thing with other presidents. I mean, people hate them and they love them, and there's a love-hate relationship, and some people like this, and some people change their minds every 6 months or 6 days, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, no one's going to really go at the core of the problem and say, hey, I don't believe in government or I don't believe in force. Why doesn't society just have a voluntary way of doing things, doing things voluntary, funding things voluntary, doing things voluntary, helping people out, charity and all that. But in reality, it's just people, they get mad because you insult them, or even when you're not insulting them, they think that you're insulting them. And it's like, really, these people who do agree with you suddenly don't agree with you because they think you insulted someone. Well, if you're more than willing to change your position on something because you feel someone's insulted, then your position's false anyway. So I don't even really know what you're even yammering about. What do you even have a position for anyway? Your position's fluid. It changes. It changes with emotion. You're not changing your argument based on logic. You're using emotion to change your argument. So it's really not much an argument. It's not much of a stance if you're just changing it based on how you feel that day. I mean, that's almost schizophrenic. That's like having multiple personalities. You're not really the same person the next day. It doesn't really make any sense to me. But that's how people want to play it, and that's how people are. I guess every time you make an argument, just be as nice as possible. Like on Facebook, if you make an argument with someone, be nice about it, state your opinions, state maybe citations, and maybe state some, or share some links to videos, and share some links to blogs and opinions, and maybe, articles that support your position, and just leave it at that. And they still insult you. Screenshot the screenshot the conversation and save it, and then show it to everybody else and say, see, here's proof that even when you do come at people with sugar, even when you do, you catch more flies with honey or whatever, which is a stupid expression. Who wants to catch flies? Why would your goal be to catch flies? Anyway, so you used the honey method, which is you used honey to catch more flies, and you were nice to the person. You you peacefully disagreed with them, and they still insulted you. So when they do that, just copy and paste, screenshot, copy paste, go to Paint or whatever you use to do save the print screens, and just show people that even when you do peacefully argue with people insult you. And how are they not morons? How are they not idiots? How are they not vulgar jackasses for insulting you when you didn't even insult them? But that's not how things work. See, people are hypocrites, and that's why it doesn't make sense to give them a government to run. It doesn't make sense to give people who are mostly hypocrites a government to control other people that they claim are bad people. But I don't know. So there you go. I don't believe in the public education system. I don't believe in funding it. I believe in homeschooling. I'm not necessarily a proponent of private schools, because private schools end up falling under that trap of seemingly private but not totally private systems that don't quite work, because they always have some kind of outer shadowy government presence there, and they're crony too at some point. But if you homeschool your kids, you're the influence on your kids, and if your student fails, it's because you failed your student, and your student is your child. So, and that's, hey, you gave birth to your child, or you took care of your child, and you want your children to learn what you want them to learn, or you want them to learn what you learned as a child, or you want to pass on your knowledge to your child. Well, what better way to do it than homeschooling? I mean, you should be your teacher, or you should be your children's teacher first and foremost, and always. Don't expect a stranger to teach your children, because they'll teach your children anything they want, and they won't. You can't change it, because you can't petition public education. Public educators end up doing what they want. So why even rock that boat? Why even try to rock that boat? Why don't you do it the way? Why don't you undermine the public education system by being the education system, by being your own teacher, by being your children's teacher? It'll work wonders, but people don't want to. They would rather leave the job to everybody else. And that's what's wrong with society, is that we don't take responsibility, and we don't take action, and we don't realize that there's responsibility and freedom, there's freedom and responsibility. If we took it upon ourselves to teach ourselves and teach the people we love, the fundamentals of life, and the basics of survival and all that stuff, we wouldn't be dependent on other people for these solutions, for these answers. And because a lot of times other people aren't willing to give up those answers, so it's kind of a hard luck story. People end up just being on their own without being on their own. So you can't depend on other people most of the time. I mean, people learn that the hard way. People learn that when they're in their 30s. People learn that when they're in their 50s. They can't depend on people, and they have to depend on themselves. And that's what's wrong with society, is that government's not solving our problems. So why do we need government? They never solved our problems. For 10,000 years, we've been experimenting with government, and it's always failed. So why don't we try the experiment of self-governance and help people when we're able to, and people will help us when they're able to, and it works out in the end, because it always works out. Private charities always work out. Private citizens always help out in the time of need. GoFundMe, private charities, mutual aid societies. You got millionaires, billionaires going out of their way to pay for the education of poor black people, saying that, oh, hey, yeah, you know what, I'll donate $10 million to the cause, or hey, I'm going to personally guarantee that you're going to get an higher education because I'm paying for your scholarship, or they're not even a scholarship. I'm just, send me the bill, and I'm paying for your education. It happens all the time. You hear about a story where a millionaire spends $2 million on funding 40, 50 people's education and helping out people that aren't even being helped out by their own family or their own supposed government. You don't have a government. Do I own a government? Do I have a government? No. Do you have a government? Not really. How's it your government? You can't make it do anything you want it to do. You don't own it. You just fund it forcefully. You fund it by being forced to fund it. You're not funding it voluntarily. And how is it really yours? Public property is not yours. You can't go out and take a shit in the middle of the road and say it's mine. You can't have a picnic on a road. You can't go to public parks at nighttime because cops fear that you might be doing deviant activity like selling drugs or meeting prostitutes there or prostituting yourself out there. But even though it's your park, if you pay taxes, if you're a taxpayer, it's your park, right? It's your park, right? But no, because you have certain provisions that you can't be at after dusk. You can't be there after sundown. Just like roads, you can't be on roads unless you're driving on them, even though you pay for them with your taxes. You pay fuel taxes, you pay sales taxes, you pay income taxes, whatever tax they want you to pay, you're forced to pay them. Yet you can't do what you want on public lands. So it's just like, if public lands aren't your land, government's not your government, because even though you fund it, you have no choice in the matter. You have no say in the matter, because there's always someone who outnumbers you and tells you what to do. So it's not your government, it's not your land. Public land is not your land. Public land is not for you to use, because public, just like they say, how is public land? Public land is an oxymoron, it seems like. How can something be publicly owned, but technically owned by no one at the same time? And it's true. You can't camp out at state parks, even though you paid for the state park because your taxes paid for it. And then state parks have the balls to ask for private donations even after they're supposedly government and state, and taxpayer funded. They need more money from private citizens because they don't realize that most people don't realize that most of the funding for state parks doesn't even come from taxpayers, it comes from taxpayers in other ways, like private charities and donations. But still, you can't camp out at a national park unless there's certain designated areas for it. You can't just go out in the middle of the park and pitch a tent near Old Faithful, the geyser, or whatever. Or you can't pitch a tent on top of Thomas Jefferson's head at Mount Rushmore. You can't do those things, even though you paid for those things. So what's the point of funding those things, being forced to fund those things, when you can't actually do what you want to do with them? It makes no sense. It's just like, why fund public education when all it does is fund higher teacher salaries so they can pay their union dues, and the unions get fat and rich off of your kids, and your teachers get fat and rich off your kids, and they can be fat drunks and losers and never do anything to help your kids, and they can make $100,000 a year being a stupid teacher that actually there's no incentive for them to actually teach your kids, because whether your kids fail school or not, your teacher still gets paid. The teacher still gets paid and still keeps the job whether your child passes or not. So there's no performance-based incentives. In any other field of work, those people would probably get fired. Those public sector union teachers in any other realm without union protections and government protections would get fired for a lack of performance on the job like that. They would get fired. So charter schools that don't fall under union jurisdictions, that don't fall under government restrictions and jurisdictions, their teachers get fired in those situations, because when teachers don't perform and help their kids pass and teach your children to actually pass something and actually teach them something, and when the people who run that school see how their teachers perform, and if their teachers perform poorly, they get fired, because there's no incentive to keep them if they can't educate their children. So in reality, people don't understand that without public education, you'd have other opportunities. Well, obviously, taxpayers would have more money to spend on their own child's education if they didn't want to homeschool them. They could go to private schools or charter schools, and there's alternatives. But there's not so many alternatives in the system of things as it is now, because despite the fact that people are allowed to homeschool their children, and people are allowed to charter their children in these charter schools and these private schools, that there's a lot of restrictions to it. There's so many restrictions to it, you might as well not even have children. So it's kind of almost an incentive not to have children. But whatever, that's about all I have to say about public education in this video. And I was just ranting about how someone called me an idiot because supposedly they agree with me, but yet they're defending someone that they disagree with. And I'm all about it, calling someone immature because they have an opinion on something, all because someone looks like Sid Caesar, and I can't help it that someone else, the woman of all people, looks like Sid Caesar. But whatever.